So now we're going to take a look at how we actually start working with Adobe Premiere. And you can see from our course outline here, Premiere setup, there's some things we do when we're setting up before we edit, just get everything set up. So we're going to see some of that in this video. So I'm going to launch Adobe Premiere, and when it comes up, it looks like this, and I'm ready to create a new project. And in my folder structure, I have this folder right here, and I'm going to go into 047, and there are the two files. So this video right here, I might change this to desktop because that's the screen recording, right? So, or maybe I'll call this screen, and that's screen 047, and I'll call this, me and 047, right? Like that's the instructor. And so there are my two video files, and they're for this 047, which was editing software. And now I'm ready to import those into Adobe Premiere, so I'm just going to bring these over to the side for a moment. Come back to Adobe Premiere. By the way, if you're wondering how I'm switching between things like that, that is an Alt-Tab. You hold down Alt in Windows on your keyboard, and you press the Tab key, and it allows you to cycle through open applications till you get to the one you want, and then you choose it, right? And then that's how you Alt-Tab between things. So now I'm going to go here in Adobe Premiere and choose New Project. And it's asking me where do I want this project to be saved. I'm going to change this. So I'm going to change the location, Browse. And all these folders here, I am now in 47. And so I'm going to save it in there. And I'm just going to confirm that, 047. So that's where the editing file is going to be. So Adobe Premiere is going to generate an editing file where it is, here's the file that was used to edit everything. And this one was editing software, right? So I'll call 047 editing software will be the name of this edit file. I'm going to highlight that and copy it because I'm going to use that again in a second. Hit OK. All right, so Adobe Premiere opens up. First thing you need to know about Adobe Premiere is here under Window, you have workspaces, and you want to be in the editing workspace. So if your workspace ever gets messed up, like maybe some reason, my workspace starts looking like this. I'm like, that doesn't look like the workspace. You want to go to Window, Workspaces, and just come back to Editing, and that will get everything rearranged. Now a little bit of an orientation of this editing area. Down here, you have your project, 047 Editing Software. That's your project. And this is where our files are going to be, and it says Import Media to Start. So that's going to be our first step. And we'll learn about the 4 panels here as we learn, but this is the first one. So I'm going to go grab some media. I'm going to grab those 2 videos and just drag them and drop them right here. You can see there's now that editing file. It just imported those 2 videos. The first one I want to bring in is I want to bring in the video of me on screen. So I'm going to take this video, I'm going to drag it over to this timeline. So here's my timeline, and there's no sequences there right now. But when I drag this over and drop it, I'm going to create a sequence. And also right over here, you're going to see a sequence appear. And the blue is kind of like a source file. The green is a sequence I created. And so the sequence I create is going to have a little green thumbnail. So I'm going to drag this over here, and there's the green thumbnail. And it's now me 047. I'm going to click on that and rename it to 047 Editing Software. And when I rename it, you'll see that sequence over here be 047 Editing Software. It's now 047 Editing Software. So there's my first clip, and you can see I have a preview of it up here. So this previews up here, this previews my clip down there, right? So as I play this, it's playing this down here, and I can move this timeline around and just play, right? So that's how you do that part of it. So I have my camera up there. I want that to always be on top, and I want my screen to be under. And so I'm going to take this, and you can see V1, V2, V3, A1, A2, A3. These are highlighted. I'm going to unhighlight them. And it basically, when they're highlighted, it just says to Adobe, this is when I bring something new in. This is where I want you to put it. So I'm going to drag this up to V2. I want that to be higher. And I'm going to drag this down to A2, sure. And then here I'm going to highlight V1 and A1, just highlighted those. So when I bring in my screen recording, drag it over, since those are highlighted right there, it drops it right there. So now I have my screen recording. This is my screen recording. I have my camera, the me recording right here. And those are all, this is on top of that, so that's why we're seeing this here in the sequence. If I was to say, hey, don't show me that, right, I would see what's underneath, which is the desktop, the screen recording. Cool. So now I'm going to just highlight both those, click and drag over them, right-click them, choose Synchronize, right? So now we're going to sync the clips, highlight them, right-click them, choose Synchronize, and I'm going to synchronize audio. And so it just automatically synced those. And I could zoom in. I could zoom in with plus and minus on the keyboard, zoom in on the timeline, plus and minus on the keyboard. And so when I zoom in, I could see, you know, that, and I just grabbed that to kind of extend the height of my waveform right there, so I could see that a little higher and see that a little bit higher. And I could see, you know, that this stuff is lined up. So maybe somewhere in here I did my clapping. It looks like this was my clapping right here, right? And I could zoom in, I could see those are pretty well lined up. And there's my clapping right there. I didn't do my clapping at the end. I forgot to do that. I always forget to do that. But that's a good practice if you can remember. If not, no big deal. So those are all lined up. And I can now turn the audio off on this one. Right now, there might be a little bit like a millisecond lag.
3 claps, you can do 1, 2, 3.
It's totally perfectly lined up. But you want to mute your screen audio or whichever audio is not primary, and just have your primary audio. And that's this audio here for me. So now this audio is muted, and this is the only one that will come through when I produce my course. So that's the setup for Premiere. We saw how to open Premiere. We saw how to import clips. I just took my clips, and I dragged them, and I dropped them right there, and it imported the clips. And then we also saw about workspaces. So I went to Window, Workspaces, and then chose Editing, put me in the Editing workspace. And then we got a little environment orientation. We saw this is the project area, right, where we drag and drop stuff. And then we drag something over here, and it creates our sequence over here, and then it shows up here, which is our preview of what we're creating. And then, so that was creating a sequence. And then we saw how to align clips. And we aligned clips by right-clicking, right? We selected the clips, and then we right-clicked, and we went to Synchronize. Select clips, right-click, and then Synchronize. And then in there, we chose by audio, right? And it synced everything up for us. So right-click, Synchronize, and we chose by audio and hit OK. And so that synchronized everything for us. And then we also saw just turning off and turning on these little things when you're going to drag something in. And that just tells you where you want to do it. And then we saw how to mute, right? Mute audio, which isn't primary, right? So just keep whatever audio you want running. But that's your setup. That gets you up and running. And that was Premiere in 8 minutes. So I know that was a little bit quick. But I'm just going to teach you the essentials of what you need to know for this one particular use of Premiere. And so this is going to get you going with editing multiple sources of video in Adobe Premiere. And if you want to know more about Premiere, that's an entire course. Eventually, maybe I'll create it, or I have a friend, Kelsey, who hopefully will create it. She's awesome. But anyhow, this is how you get up and going with Premiere. That's the first step. And in the next videos, we're going to see a little bit more about, obviously, how to edit in Premiere.